With over 250 cars in the game, choosing where to spend your tokens can be tough. Some cars are exclusive, some are not, and it can get confusing to choose, especially for beginners. So these are 73 cars you should avoid spending your tokens on. This list includes cars from all classes, even some top tier ones. I will explain why to avoid each car and suggest better alternatives. First, I will quickly list the first 13 useless cars. The common thing among them is that they are all useless. So don't blink, let's dive into it. 3, 2, 1, go. Renault Deseo, Porsche 911 Carrera RS 3.8, Lotus Emira, Lamborghini Countach 25th Anniversary, KTM Expo GTX, Ital Design 01, Ferrari J50, Jaguar F-Type SVR, Porsche Boxster 25th, Ital Design Da Vinci, Volkswagen XL, Lotus Evora Sports 410, Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 50th Edition. Now let's get to the remaining 60 cars. Number 60. Glickenhaus 003F. This car is without a doubt an OG beast. If you are playing the game since launch, you are aware of potential of this car. But you guys probably ask what this car is doing on this list if it is such a beast. Well, for beginners, I would like to point out that this car actually requires skill to drive. It is not the easiest thing to drive due to its stiff handling, wider drifting and lack of nitro. The top speed is already good, but this car is now sitting at mid-bottom of class B. You can easily obtain this car in car hunts and legend store. While it is a good car, but just don't spend your tokens on this car. Number 59. Aston Martin V12 2022. This car is added more recently in the game and is standing next to TVR Griffith in terms of competition. I made a community post about these two cars and asked which one is the worst. Well, a lot of you in the comment section were complaining how both of these cars are pain to drive, but 280 of you voted in the poll. And 83% of you voted that this car is worse than TVR Griffith, which is pretty self-explanatory in my opinion. And given the fact that you can get TVR Griffith for free, that's totally invalidates spending tokens on this car. Number 58. Infinity Project Black F. This fork is also from Class D. It drives fine, but it is not like a whole lot useful, especially in front of cars like BMW i8 Roadster or Lotus Elise Sprint. So in that sense, it needs to be ignored. Number 57. Ford GT. I think this car has been done injustice, to be honest. It is pretty iconic car in real life, but it drives like a tractor in the game. If I favor a buff in stats of any car, it would be this car. If you don't want to buff 10 out of it, then make it at least drive like a 488 GTB. But let's come to the actual stat of this car in the game. If you are a beginner and you are doing career, chances are you may encounter this car as necessary to own, but be patient and try to get this car the best free way possible, either by Legend Store or through B-Class Cup. Why I am not recommending you to spend token on this car? Well, after you max it out, you're not gonna use it much, so spare your tokens for better options. Number 56. FV Fragmento Sorpasso GT3. This car, only introduction this car needs for this video is skip it. I never really liked this car at all, and as for the performance of this car, well, the top end A-class car can easily outperform this car, so skip it. Number 55. McLaren Elva. This car is not too bad. It's a Legend Pass exclusive car, but the reality is that it is barely faster than the Corvette Grand Sport and goes around the same top speed as Porsche 911 GT3 RS. While you may not easily get the 911, but you are aware of the utility of the Corvette and how easy it is to get yourself a max Corvette. Besides, if you are meant to spend tokens, then FLM has been showing up more recently to get. If you manage to lay your hand on FLM, you don't need to spend tokens on this car. If you get this car by a freeway like Car Hunt, that has more utility. Number 54. Dodge Viper GTS. This car is not necessarily a bad car. It drives fine, but since it is a low-end car, you need to skip it for good. You will get it through A-Class weekly cups, car hunts, Legend Store and even in regular pack. Number 53. Porsche 718 Cayman. It's okay, man. In terms of its performance, it is ranked as fairly average. You will need this car in Rizvani Beast X Weekly Cup, but outside of that event, it is pretty forgetful car, so don't go for this one. Number 52. Peugeot SR1. This Nitro King, who can forget? But don't forget that you don't need to spend tokens on this car. Number 51. Porsche 911 Targa 4S. It used to be multiplayer car, but now they have changed the reward. Just like the TVR Griffith, this car is harder to drive, and alongside of 718 Cayman, you will need this car in Rizvani Weekly Cup. You can do good with this car in multiplayer if you manage to deal with its bad handling and wide drifting, but try not to spend any tokens on this car. Number 50. Formula E Gen 2 Asphalt Edition. This car I have covered it a lot on the channel, both from the global and China version of the game. It goes the same top speed as that of Dodge Viper ACR and it is extremely fun to drive. The handling and drifting are amazing, the nitro efficiency is pretty good as well. This car has not really been difficult to get, but we don't really know how GameLoft will continue with this car in the future. This car has very low top speed, so you are better mixing out top speed oriented cars like Venza or Arinera first, and then you can go for agility oriented cars like this one if you want to. Number 49. Donkerwood D8 GTO Individual Series. Just like Formula E, the Donkerwood is pretty fun to drive but slow for sure. It is also sitting towards the bottom of Class C. It's a legend pass car which just serves the purpose for entering in a special event, and then after that it is useless. Now it is appearing in car hunts. If you manage to grind in the car hunt, then it is fine. But don't spend any tokens on this car. Number 48. Arash AF10 and Arash AF8 Falcon Edition. On this spot I have these two folks and nothing about them is special in any way. One of them is a legend pass car, the AF10, and the other is a key car, the AF8. While AF8 is fun to drive, but they both are not worthy to spend token in order to get. If you simply get a car like 488 GTB, you are good to go. Number 47. Ballwell MKX Nagari 500. This car is also one of the least performing in its class. It is decidedly mediocre and I think it is also available in the showroom event. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it also comes in the car hunt, so outside of these events, try not to spend your tokens on this car. Number 46. Ford GT Mark II. We discussed the Ford GT earlier, right? While that car has top speed for it but lacks everything else, this car has everything going for it but lacks in the top speed department. It is extremely slow, almost too slow in terms of Class B standard. Why does this car exist? Well, this serves as a barrier to enter any special event. Outside of that, it has no utility for it, so try not to spend your tokens on this car. It is just not worth it. It appears in the key hunt, so if you manage to grind and get it, then it is good for you. Other than that, nothing. Number 45. Mercedes-Benz 2022 show car VN AMG. This car, despite of its weird look, I have seen in multiplayer in low-end Silver League, but by seeing I meant participating. It does not necessarily mean winning, as these two are separate things. I'm not sure if they just throw it away in a race and leave the race to lower the rating, but if it is by any stretch of imagination useful, then let me know, because I don't think that it is. I have this car at 1 star and I would say that it is better to skip this car, but if it has any utility, then let me know. Number 44. Ferrari F50. Just a DB11 but exclusive. It has been featured as legend pass car in the game, but if it ever made accessible in any way, keep in mind not to spend any tokens on this car, because it's not worth it. I like the look of this classic and vintage Ferrari, but other than that, it is nothing special. Number 43. Porsche 911 GT1 Evolution. For some bizarre reason, while this car is not useful by any stretch of imagination, it is still one of the cars which have not been made readily available to unlock. This car is useless to the extreme, even when you look at the stats of this car. So if you ever see yourself spending on this car, just don't. Refrain yourself, otherwise the disappointment will be huge. Number 42. Renault RS01. This car is pretty below average. Only manages to go around 334 km per hour. Not like too slow for its class, but the problem is the rest of the stats. It has low acceleration, while it handles okay, the drifting is very sluggish, and while it is pretty bad already, the nitro is lacking. All of this in terms of usage makes it a pretty bad experience to drive for sure. So try to refrain yourself while spending on this car. Number 41. Honda Civic Type R. Not gonna lie, I like this car in real life, the 2018 generation of it, but in the game, while it looks like that 2018 generation, the performance is meh. I have this car at 2 star, and at max, beside acceleration, the top speed is slow, the handling and drifting are stiff, and the nitro is fine. Since the top speed is low and handling is stiff, that makes this car pretty useless to own, so don't spend any tokens on this car. Number 40. Ferrari LaFerrari. As a beginner, if you are playing career, there is a pretty good chance that you may stuck on this car. You can also encounter a position where you think that you are missing out a big reward if you don't own or start up this car. But my words of advice here are that be patient and start up this car no matter how much long it takes. Because if you spend tokens on this car and start it up, you will realize it pretty soon that it did not worth it. Number 39. McLaren 765 LT. This car was featured in the Bring the Heat season for Center DHE Draft Syndicate. It has the look but not the performance. Even McLaren 600 LT is more popular than this car. This is not just my observation. I made a community post comparing 765 LT with 600 LT. 298 of you participated in the poll, and 64% of you picked 600 LT over this car. So yeah, it is pretty clear which car is a better investment. Nominated by me and rejected by you guys. Pretty vocal result. Number 38. Aston Martin V12 Speedster. This ugly car is just a paywall in any given special event, while you can access this car through showroom event, and this car featured in some car hunt as well. Now to be honest with you, the showroom event is pretty grindy. If you grind enough and manage to complete the showroom event, congratulations for it. Because now you have a leg up in a special event, but outside the showroom event, if this car appears in any way which requires you to spend tokens on this car, just refrain yourself. Because sitting at the bottom of class C, this car does not worth the amount of tokens that is required to be spent on it. Number 37. Chrysler MC412. This car serves only one purpose, to stand as a paywall in a special event. You can notice it yourself. Next time you're doing a special event, if you don't have any barrier, you may encounter this one. If you don't have this car, you probably be thinking that you are missing out on something. Well, in actuality, you don't. This car is slow. It barely goes 410 to 412 km per hour. The handling is a bit stiff, but the drifting is decent. The nitro is mediocre, but the acceleration hampers it a lot. This is why even if you have this car, you can't really use it. But you're probably gonna ask that if it would be a barrier in a special event, then I need to get this car. Well, hold your horses. This car still does not worth the price that you will pay for it. As a free-to-play player, you need to boycott the car which requires you to have this car. By boycott, I meant that you go as far as you can in the special event, and when you get the barrier, stop. Don't waste any precious resources. This is how pay-to-win elements embedded in the cars actually look like. Number 36. Spania GTA Spano 2015. Similar folks to the Chrysler, this car also served the same purpose, to stand as a barrier in a special event. I think we encountered this car in Lotus EM9 special event. Did it have any concern over there? No, it was meant to be barrier in that special event. I want you to look at the top speed only, because other stats are not too great either. It goes 399 km per hour. I don't mean to say anything, it says exactly everything about it on the paper. I mentioned earlier to boycott the car which requires you to have this car. I mean it, because this car also does not worth the price that you will pay for it. Number 35. Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 Club Sport. Not gonna lie, there was a time when I was a fan of this car, and it has good reasons going for it. It was C-Class elite car, very agile and top at the performance. It is still an agile and fun to drive car, but the problem is that the utility of this car has now been replaced with better cars. If you choose agility, 599XX Evo is a better option. And if you choose speed and performance, then don't bother to even look at this car. You can start a Vencesat and Arena Zera combined from Daniel Store, and with those two, you don't even need this car. Does all this mean that this car is bad? No. But if you are going to spend tokens on this car, be aware that you're not getting like a whole lot of fortune, and you may also regret spending tokens on this one too. Number 34. McLaren Archer. How this car performs in a general scheme of things, I don't really know, because it's a Legend Pass exclusive, but since this car sits in middle of Class B, this makes it pretty much invalid to spend tokens. So yeah, skip it. If it has performance going for it, then please let me know. Number 33. Jaguar XE SV Project 8. Released in 2022, if you look at the performance of this car, despite being the Legend Pass exclusive, it is sitting at the middle of Class C. And that is enough to justify the fact that whether you should spend tokens on this car or not. The quick answer to this question is no. Cars like Vencer or Inera are better than this car. You can also rely simply on the fact that even though it has been in the game for the past 2 years, it is not really the thing that is seen in Silver League multiplayer. Number 32. Kepler Motion. This car was released as Legend Pass exclusive, but it does not have anything going for it. Just a combination of Lamborghini Asterion and Ferrari 488 GTB. And given the fact that both Asterion and Ferrari 488 GTB are pretty easy to get, you can see the need why you should skip this one. Number 31. Jaguar XJR 15. Not the XJR 9 but the XJR 15. Just like the SV Project 8, this car also deals with the same dilemma. This Jaguar as well as SV Project 8 are decidedly average for real. Like I mentioned the better options earlier, you can understand the drill here. Skip it for the good cause. Number 30. Porsche Mission R. After the release of Unite expansion, this car is the one that has been added recently into the game, and yeah, for the Drive Syndicate, you can start up this car as much as you want or need to. But outside the Drive Syndicate, should you be really spending tokens on this car? Well, no. Outside the Drive Syndicate, this car sits in the middle of its class, and if I'm not wrong, it is a Class C car. But since it is in the middle, you can get the top end option of the class, which will help you a lot. Now anyone who start up this car in the Drive Syndicate will already have it at good star count. But my point is that if it ever releases outside the Drive Syndicate, just skip it. Number 29. Lamborghini Sesto Elemento. This car has not a lot to offer, to be honest. It is barely faster than the Huracan. The acceleration is also better than the Huracan. The handling, drifting and nitro are all decent in my opinion. So you're probably gonna ask, what's the catch for it? The thing is that this car is barely faster than the Huracan. We are talking about few kilometers per hour of a speed gap. Now given the fact that if you already have the Huracan, you are not really missing out much. Matter of fact, Huracan is actually easier to get than this car. So it is basically a Huracan 2.0. In that case, cars like F1 Lam, W12 and even DBS Superleggera are better options. So better not to spend tokens on this car. Number 28. Nissan GTR 50 Retail Design. This car is not bad, if I'm being honest. But in the grand scheme of things, you need to first focus on better options like Apollo N, Volkswagen W12 and FLM. After that, if you deem it fit, then you can go for this car. The main drawback that this car has is its slow top speed. Number 27. D Tomaso P900. This car is one of the most recent one that has been added into the game and made its debut through Key Hunt. But I'm not gonna mention the worst drop rates here. The main drawback that this car has was its bad drifting, and just like the previous Vogue, you can get the Vencer instead of this car, which is extremely fun to drive. So if you skip this one, you're not really missing out a lot. Number 26. Lamborghini Diablo GT. Just like the P900, this car also has a drawback, but it is not its drifting. It is rather better in drifting, but this car lacks acceleration, and on twisty track, you can feel the lagging acceleration into play. If track is happen to be straight, you will be fine, and if not, then you will struggle, and bad acceleration is not the only problem. The thing is that this car has not been made readily available to get either. So yeah, compared to this car, if you get cars like 599XX Evo, Vencer, Egnera or McLaren GT, you will do just fine, to be honest. Number 25. Nissan R390 GT1. Just like the Nissan GTR 50, this car is also not too bad if I'm being honest. But in the grand scheme of Class B, this car is barely worse than Apollo N. The Nissan R390 was released in 2022 and in that sense is not readily available. Compare that to Apollo N, you can max it out from car hunts and Lions Door, and given the fact that you can lay your hands on a better car for free, it is enough to invalidate spending token on this one. Like I said, this is not necessarily a bad car. It is one of the cars that you can start up in the end after getting all the useful ones. Number 24. Porsche 911 GT2 RS Plus Sport. Among the troops of new car on their debut, this car is one of the cars who has been forgotten rather quickly because it was doing weird stuff on ramp. This car was so much obscure that it could not take any ramp normally. Both on flat and barrel ramps, it would do some glitchy or weird physics stuff, so players stopped using it. In Platinum League, you really don't see this car. When it was released during Porsche Update 2020, it was sitting somewhat at the top of Class A, but now it has been pushed to the middle of Class A. Since a lot of cars are better than this car now, you really don't need to spend your token on this one. Number 23. Bugatti Veyron 16.4 Grand Sport VTEC. Well, released in 2021, this car did not get any attention from the player base. Well, one reason was that it was slow for an S-Class, and the second thing is that the drifting was pretty wide. Even though it is such an iconic car in real life, but to be honest, Gameloft has done a lot of injustice with this car in my opinion. I asked in the community section about this car, and the main thing that everyone was pointing me towards was its bad drifting. So yeah, I won't really recommend you guys to go for this car. Number 22. Razor Tachyon Speed. Just like the Veyron, this car is also too much invalid. The drifting is wide, the speed is lacking. While Veyron has definitely a little better performance, this car is just decidedly worse. So yeah, no second thought, skip it. Number 21. Lamborghini Veneno. Now if you are a beginner, you probably may encounter the situation where you really need this car. Maybe in career or in an event. I somehow have this car at 5-star, but I don't remember how I got there. And if you are unaware of the stats of this car, it goes at the same top speed as the max out gold Aston Martin Victor from Class A. Apollo N from Class B goes 1 km/h faster than this car. A maxed out Imola will easily demolish this car, to be honest. The acceleration, nitro, handling and drifting are fine, to be honest. The point is that this car is sitting at the bottom of Class S, and that makes it easily less of a viable option. Number 20. Tech Rules 8096 track version. I am actually sad to nominate this one. I used to love this car and I did not have a chance to get it. The stats of this car in those days were solid, but now they have been outdated since approximately there are more than 7 cars now that are better than this car. Cars like Imola and Jaguar XJR9 are way better than this car, and even FLM, which is sitting a class below it. Instead of going for this car, you can max out Pagani Huayra BC for free from Legends Store. Now Huayra BC is not like too much faster, but it has potential to perform more reliably than Tech Rule. So as for now, you need to skip it, to be honest. Right now, the valid source where this car should be thrown away for free is to just give it away in special hunt. This is what I think. Let me know if you suggest otherwise. Number 19. Porsche 911 GT3 RS. Just like the previous one, this car had also been my love. I used to dream to get this car like 2 years ago. It is still somewhat exclusive in a way that it has not really been made readily available to get, even though it has been kicked out of B-Class Elite event. 911 versus Huracan, even though I will release a short comparison between the two, but the key point where 911 dominates the Huracan is the drifting. This car, even though it is slower than Huracan by 5 km/h, but on a twisty track, it has potential to outperform it. Okay, you probably may now ask that if it is so good, then why are you not recommending me to spend token on this car? Well, it has become less viable these days. Those who already have this car use it seldomly because Gold League multiplayer before the launch of ALU expansion was flooded with a full length. Now I won't hate to admit that it is painful for me to say that you should not go for this car. Number 18. Jaguar XJ220S TWR. This car in terms of driving experience is pretty nice. Extremely smooth to drive, but in the overall scheme of cars, it is extremely hard to recommend. The stats are solid, the acceleration is good, the nitro is lasting, and handling and drifting are also solid, but slow in the speed department. So skip it for real because it's not worth it. Number 17. Rimac Concept S. Just like the previous one, there is also same story with this car as well. Even more smooth to drive but lacks in the speed department. So you know the drill, skip it. Number 16. Ferrari F8 Tributo. Since its release in the game, this car is enjoying the status of exclusive car. Even today, where a lot of A-class cars are faster than this car. This car is not bad, but it is slow, and that's what makes this car a recommendation not to spend your tokens. If you happen to spend your tokens on cars like Jaguar XJR9 or Pagani Mola, you would be doing a lot better than this one. Number 15. Bentley Continental GT3. That's why this is a GOAT. I mean, it's a boat. Sorry, it used to be that way. The Bentley Continental GT3 on its release is the car that was only drifting in Gameloft trailer. It was the boat of Class D, but later on the drifting got fixed. Now drift's fine, but you're gonna ask that now it has been fixed, why not let's go for it? Well, going for it is still a no, because it is slow and cars like TVR Griffith that are harder to drive can go faster than this car. Fun fact, Griffith can go like neck and neck with Chevrolet Corvette Grand Sport. Yeah, that's why if you encounter a skilled driver in Griffith, this is the reason that you fail to catch up to him, unless you are skilled with Griffith too. But since you are a beginner, I won't ask you to take the pain of driving the Griffith. Alongside DS E10s or Lotus Elise Sprint, you can also invest in cars like Furai and obviously skip this. Number 14. FV Frenuvento Asphalt. This car is just a knockoff Genti Echelon, and given the fact that you can now get Genti Echelon at 5 star from Starway and max it from Legends Store, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the drifting on this car, the Asphalt is also lacking. This is enough to invalidate the point of spending tokens on this car. Number 13. Mercedes AMG GT Black Series. Since we are talking about the boats, let's talk about another one. If you are a beginner, you might be shocked to see this car on the list, but if you are an OG player, you can understand the reason for seeing this much up on the list. So what are the drawbacks of this car? You probably imagine that it won't have any since it is sitting at the top of Class C. But the thing is that it is a boat of Class C. This is also another car that can drift but only in Gameloft trailer. In gameplay, it glides and you will feel the struggle if you are on a track like Tuscany or semi-twisty track like Paris. The Ferrari Daytona also suffers from the same issue. So as a beginner, you can spend your tokens better on cars like McLaren GT. That car still drifts a little wide, but it is better overall, and you can also go for cars like Venza or Arinera 33. Venza is still fun to drive compared to Arinera, but these three options are better for beginners. And if by any stretch of imagination Gallardo shows up, go for it. Even though it may not stay in the lead event for long, but it is still a solid contender. Number 12. Aston Martin Valkyrie. If I'm being honest, this car is extremely fun to drive but slow for sure. If it had been sitting in Class A, that would be a solid contender for me to recommend, but since it is an S-Class car, it's a big no for me to recommend. What are the drawbacks? It's a tough speed. Acceleration is solid, handling and drifting is solid, coupled with the fact that this car can also do floaties and drift punches, and nitro is also long lasting. It may perform fine in Go series, but again, your competition needs to be weak for it. And as a beginner, if you happen to max out Chiron over this car, you would be doing fine, but with this car, you will be at disadvantage in multiplayer even to the hand of average player who can manage to tame the Chiron. So yeah, this is only good for collectible. Number 11. Lamborghini Sian FKP and Pininfarina Battista. This is a controversial topic, I have to say. I actually don't have both of these cars to be honest, but I'm not gonna say that you should not spend tokens on both of these cars. No, the thing is that you need to avoid one of these two. Which one I can't really name it, but few people that I talk about it with have favored that Battista is better. I also created a community post asking you guys which one is better between these two. 260 of you participated in the poll and 69% of you favored the Sian over the Battista. The crux of the poll was that newer players were favoring the Sian and OG players were favoring the Battista. So with all this information, you can now judge better and pick one among the two. Okay, we are in the top 10 now. Number 10. Mac Mercury Sperling. This Pomeranian puppy, cutie car, if you are a beginner, you probably need better cars and you need to avoid this car. The main drawback this car has is its slow top speed. It has insane acceleration, extremely good handling and drifting, coupled with the fact that it's like to do physics stuff as well. And the nitro is also decent, but due to its slow top speed, if you skip this car and go for cars like Aventador J or Venda, those are better options for you in the long run. Number 9. Pagani Huayra R. Well, I love the look of this car, but I hate to break it to you that this car also has drawback. In this case, the drifting. While the top speed is good, but with max acceleration and nitro coupled with poor drifting, on twisty track, this car fails to recover from the speed loss. So FLM is still a better option compared to this one in my opinion. Number 8. Saleen S7 Twin Turbo. Besides EV, if there is any other source as fuel for cars except gasoline, then that would be coffee for this car. This car needs coffee and a lot of it. It takes ages to accelerate, fun to drive for sure, but the acceleration hampers it a lot. Now you can also say that Jaguar XJR9 also have low acceleration, but depending on its class, that car performs the finest and it has advantage over the competition. Saleen S7 though, it does not. It's an S-Class car and your best chance is that you have to rely on competition to perform worse to win in this car. While this car is exclusive as for now, free options like Regera, Shannon, Yesco are better option than this car. So as a beginner, try to match those cars first, then you can decide if you need this car or not. Number 7. Apollo Evo. Beauty without brain. This car has nothing under the hood. If you want to fancy yourself on the racetrack in front of other players, go for this car. If you want performance, a Max Enzo is better than this car because a gold Apollo Evo goes 368 km/h. The gold Enzo goes 379 km/h. Out of these two, a Max Apollo N goes 388 km/h. So even though both are Apollos, you can judge better which one has performance under the hood. Number 6. Lamborghini Isenza SCV12. This car is Drive Syndicate exclusive in Absolute Drive Syndicate and I am 100% sure that this car won't be easily accessible. Besides, let me know about the attainability of this car because I as for now have boycotted the Drive Syndicate for good. Because let's be real, we all know the price that we have to pay for the Drive Syndicates and just how much exclusive they are. But outside of these events, what is the performance of this car? Funny story. I was giving this car the 25th spot, but then I did some research about this car and turns out that this car is actually 4 km/h slower than the Huracan. Yeah, you heard that right, it is 4 km/h slower than the Huracan when gold, and given the fact that pay to win fever that Gameloft has created around this car since its release in 2021, this car got promoted in the list to this spot to showcase just how much of a useless it actually is and how much they are actually overselling this one. So just like the name of this car, it is essential to skip spending your tokens on this one. Besides, FLM, Enzo, Volkswagen W12, even Revuelto are better options than this Lamborghini. From this fact, you can easily understand about the utility of these Drive Syndicate like selling off cars towards us and how much useful they really are. Number 5. Maserati MC12. This car has nothing to go for. The speed is lacking. Just like the Isenza, it is slower than the Huracan in the grand scheme of things. But since it is sitting in Class C, comparing it to Huracan might not be a fair comparison. But while the speed is around 355 km/h, the acceleration is extremely slow. Okay, then you might expect that, well, it might have good handling. Well, no. The handling is stiff and the drifting is right. You may also question that maybe the nitro would be better. It is also no. The nitro efficiency is also lacking. People call this worse, but I do not really know how much worse it actually is. Just like the Alfieri, it is not the smoothest thing to drive, which makes option like 599XX Evo, while it may not be the fastest, much more viable option compared to this car. One other option with low acceleration is actually Acura NSX GT3 Evo, but that car has perfect nitro boost and one of the smoothest thing to drive. While it may not be the fastest, the performance was solid and promising, so you can understand how much invalid Maserati MC12 actually is. So yeah, it would be better to skip it. Number 4. Bugatti Divo. If by any stretch of imagination you tend to remember the special event of this car, you can understand as to why this car was featured in this list. The special event of this car requires you to have a Max Bugatti Chiron and Koenigsegg Regera to own, and if you know the performance of this car, you already are aware that the special event requirements are the biggest of a joke, to be honest. But you guys are pretty vocal about this car in the community tab. I created a community post about Bugattis in the game and asked which one would you pick to use in Legend League. 362 of you voted and only 4% of you picked this car. This car performed the second worst in that poll. Now you may ask what was the drawback. It is extremely slow by the standard of Legend League, and in that respect, even if you have a Max Tryon, you can eat this car for breakfast. Only slight bummer is that this car may be good for touch drive players, but beside that, nominated by me and rejected by you guys, I can't stress more to skip this one. Number 3. ATS Automobili GT. This is by far the worst option that you could ever chase. Not only the stats are disappointing, but also the fiasco that happened when this car was released. With the release of this car, Gameloft threw it away in a special hunt, and that was downright awful. Long story short, they were requiring you to grind day and night for a car which was pretty similar to Egoista. When you already know that Egoista is not valid for multiplayer, you can see where this car is destined to be. The trash can in my opinion. So yeah, skip it for good cause. Number 2. Bugatti Centuriaci. Unpopular opinion, but this is my nomination and you guys have shown how much of a useless this car is. In the community post about Bugattis, only 3% of you picked this car. This car performed the worst in that poll. Now you may ask what was the drawback. Even though it was Drive Syndicate exclusive, but again, this car has nothing that would justify the price that one has to pay for it. Just like the Bugatti Divo, the speed is lacking for the standard of Legend League, and in that respect, even if you have max try-on, you can eat this car for breakfast. So nominated by me and big no by my community. Couldn't agree more for this one. And finally, number 1. Lotus ER9. If you are a beginner, you may look at this car with a glimmer of hope that I wish I would be able to get this. As GameLove made the statement with the release of this car, prepare to be blown away by the seamless mix of explosive acceleration and butter smooth drifting of the new B-Class ranking, the Lotus ER9. Yeah, it's all gimmick. FLM, even though it is sitting at the top 5th spot in Class B, can eat ER9 for breakfast. So keep in mind that with the stat that this car has, even if GameLove gave it away for free, it is still not worth it. And there you have it. If you have any more car suggestions to avoid, drop them in the comment. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like this video showing 35 cars that I suggested to be added in the garage level.